Sup everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about something that I think many of you would be interested in hearing or maybe even partaking, right? We're going to be trying to guess the Dendro Archon's kit along with Altham and Deja. So for those of you who are curious, like, oh Walrus, the leaks aren't even out, why even bother talking about them? I mean, you guys probably don't believe it even when I say so, but I don't look at leaks. Just because I've gotten a lot of guesses right in the past doesn't mean I look at leaks. And one of my viewers actually was fighting in the comment section on my behalf, and after a long argument came to tell me that I should guess the kits, or at least try and predict the kits of future characters that are beyond leaks, to prove that I don't look at leaks myself, or unless I somehow have information that even the leakers don't. So at this point, pick your poison, right? So today I'm going to be trying to predict the kits of the three characters that as far as I know, people haven't really been talking about at all, because hey, they're not in the next patch, so why should people talk about them, right? But that's the play here. First and foremost, let's just start with the Dendro Archon. All right, when it comes to Dendro Archon and comes to predicting characters' kits, what I usually do is a process of elimination. You see, here's the thing about Hoyoverse. Hoyoverse doesn't like repeating themselves. They do not want two characters doing the same thing unless they are a 4-star character and a 5-star character. And even then, they try to put a little twist in it, so you get a bit of everything when it comes to elemental typing, weapons, as well as unique playstyles. So when you think of the Dendro Archon, it doesn't even matter what weapon they use. You can first rule out, for the most part, bow and on-field DPS. Why? Because it exists already. It currently exists in the game in the form of Tignari. So it's safe to assume that the Dendro Archon likely will not be an on-field character. Well, then you could say Walrus, just because a character in that element is already present as an on-field carry doesn't mean another one can't exist, right? I understand. Think of characters like Ganyu, Ayaka, Eula. They're all essentially on-field carries, right? They're three unique characters that all function as on-field units. But we also have to look at something else that Hoyoverse likes to do, and that is character tropes. When it comes to character tropes, they source a lot of this from Japanese popular anime ones, where certain characters will fall into certain character typings and therefore lean into a preferred playstyle. What I mean is, when you think of like lolly characters in animes who are like immensely powerful and seemingly a little lacking in the confidence department, then you kind of piece together what essentially this character is all about, right? And combine that with the tendency for Hoyoverse to make Archons have some sort of team supportive capabilities or facilitation, then it's not too much of a stretch essentially to say that the Dendro Archon likely is going to be a more supportive character that is off-field. Now that we've gotten that more narrowed in, we can build off of that essentially, right? It's not enough for people to say, oh well, even I could guess that she's likely going to be an off-field support-ish character. What is her kit going to do? Well, you see, this is where we get into the realm of potential bullshittery, because there's two routes that Hoyoverse can take. Hoyoverse can turn the Dendro Archon into a pretty much dedicated support in the form of a healer and EM buffer, so think Bennett but for EM and maybe Dendro in general. Or they can make her an immensely powerful Dendro applicator that is useful in so many team comps and scenarios, essentially broadening her horizons in the form of reaction playstyle. You see, both of these options are valid and for the most part will be beloved by the community, as it's going to be slotted into so many different teams, both currently as well as down the future for new characters when they do arrive in the game, right? It's essentially a timeless way to design a character, so long as your future characters will be able to take advantage of this kit. The question is, which one do I think the Dendro Archon is going to lean more towards? If I were to have to choose between which one of the two I think is more impactful, I do think the healer and team buffer is going to be more valuable, and that is why precisely I think they are not going to go with that. The reason is, a character currently like Bennett exists in the form of healing and buffing attack. A character like Diona currently exists in the form of healing and buffing EM. So you're gonna have a character like the Dendro Archon healing, buffing, what exactly? right? I said earlier, potentially EM, but it already exists. Then you gotta make it even better. How do you make it even better? Do you add damage to it? Do you add Dendro application to it? How much more can you pile on this effect that is already a constant trope amongst other characters in the game? Albeit very, very successful examples, but I don't think HoYoverse wants to keep going down this route, as they can't seem to phase these characters out of the meta. Once people get their hands on these characters, they never want to play without them. So having this over reliance on this kind of trope is likely something HoYoverse wants to shift away from, which leaves us to a character that is off field, which applies really good and consistent Dendro application while doing good damage. Now, there could be buffing capabilities that's added through constellations, right? You can say, oh, at C4, everybody who's inside this range also gains XYZ buffings. So it's very easy for them to design a character that has all this available at their base kit and then build the rest into their constellation. So a C6 Dendro Archon not only applies great application, they also can provide decent buffings, and who knows, maybe even some level of healing, albeit not very much. The justification in this is that you really don't need that much healing for the most part in your teams anymore. Some teams can run like pseudo healers like Xingqiu and ignore healing altogether. So it wouldn't really be much of a stretch in this case, right? That's what I think for the Dendro Archon. Moving on to Altham. Now this is very interesting, right? I said earlier that HoYoverse don't want to design repeated character playstyles, but with the case of Altham and Tighnari, I do think Altham is likely going to be another on-field character. But much like the example I used earlier, look at Ganyu, look at Eula, look at Ayaka. Ganyu and Ayaka, probably you guys can say, oh, they function similar-ish, but Eula is a completely different unit from these other two cryo characters. The fact that Eula is cryo and the fact that Ayaka is cryo, they serves completely different purposes, right? Eula is for the sake of proccing superconduct, Ayaka is for the sake of playing freeze, and Ganyu is for the sake of, likely at this point people would just say, oh, to play melt. Completely different characters but sharing the same element. There could be a case made that Altham will lean more into another reaction set as opposed to Tighnari. With the sheer number of hits that Tighnari is able to dish out through his elemental skill into charge attack and his burst attack, a quicken team is likely preferred. But what about Altham? Can you guys foresee a character that is hitting less frequently but harder? Or a character maybe that can infuse their sword with Dendro and use some sort of Sumeru combat mechanics to turn himself into some sort of Dendro samurai? Perhaps even some sort of aristocratic sword skill that's been passed down for generation, or perhaps some sort of military training background that involves the sword. Whatever it may be, Altham's playstyle likely will be tied to his lore more than it is to some sort of random speculatory sword style. Much like how Eula's unique combat mechanics is developed through her dance, I can see Altham's sword style also being of a similar design. Regardless of the fact though, we gotta put some skin in the game here and make a prediction. So I predict that Altham is going to be a character that has Dendro infusion and he's going to be functioning as an on-field DPS character. I can also see him having a fluid combat style similar to Eula, where it almost feels like he's dancing across the battlefield while also delivering hard-hitting attacks to enemies in between his smooth demeanor and fluid combat style. Finally, let's talk about Deja. I think Deja is going to be someone that a lot of people are interested in. I've also heard people saying, well, there's a chance that Deja is going to be a 4-star, right? They can really see her ending up being a 4-star, but I'm just going to assume that she's a 5-star because in my heart, in this reality, I don't see her as anything but a 5-star. A character that's designed so nicely and has so many people just drooling over the keyboard for. There's no way that's going to be a 4-star. The details in her just screams 5-star. And in my opinion, Deja is going to be either somebody, I guess, right on the nail or off course into oblivion, because being a pyro character that's released in the Sumeru region, I personally would think that she leans more into burning. However, as you guys may know, burning doesn't really rely on the pyro as much as it relies on the Dendro. So this argument could be said for Altham as well. Like maybe Altham's designed for burning, but I also don't see that happening. Now, when it comes to pyro characters, it almost just seems like HoYoverse is always a little too scared to make them feel good. There's always some sort of limitations for them, either in the form of ICD, number scaling, or just general utility being so lackluster to the point where it makes you wonder if you've built the damn character wrong. But Deja's character looks vicious, experienced, and in a weird way bloodthirsty, so I can definitely imagine her being a melee character of some sort, especially with her claws. As you guys can see right here, she has some sort of a gauntlet on. I can see her definitely being somebody that wants to get close and personal to either deal damage or some sort of off-field character that provides an aura effect. I don't know really what it is, but I think it's about time we get a 5-star version of Xiangling, because out of all the original 4-star characters, we had Bennett, Xingqiu, Xiangling, and Sucrose. Xingqiu and Sucrose already have their 5-star counterparts, which leaves us with Bennett and Xiangling, and I think this may just be me speaking copium, but it's about time we get an upgraded version of Xiangling, and what better place to do it than with Deja in Sumeru. However, at the same time, it could also be said that, well, we just got Xingqiu's 5-star character, so maybe it's a little too fast for us to immediately then get another character to replace the crowd favorite Xiangling, right? HoYoverse wants to keep these 4-star characters more drawn out, so newer players who come in, getting them will feel impactful as opposed to feeling like you lost because you didn't get Deja. I also see that argument working out, so it's not going to be surprising to me if Deja ends up being like a upgraded version of D-Look, a character like D-Look but more suited for the current meta. Unfortunately, a couple niches likely won't be applicable to Deja, such as team buffer, because Bennett already exists for the most part in a pyro team. If you want to buff your teammates, Bennett is and has always been the obvious option for most people. Another likely way that HoYoverse can approach this is a 5-star version of Tomah. Think about it. Tomah is a character that a lot of people probably felt like was incredibly underwhelming. Even till this day, with the introduction of Dendro, a lot of people have said that, well, you know, Tomah have seen a little bit more play, but right now he still lacks in so many departments, and having a 5-star version come out, let's say a hybrid defensive offensive character which is also a melee mercenary, can definitely shake things up. Having a more reliable shield, or having just more damage output, or having better off-field presence can all be things that are currently desirable in the game. As much as I want Deja to be utterly broken and the best character in the game, in a way she's going to be the hardest one to put a finger on it, also because of the many unique ways that pyro can be played in the game currently. I wouldn't be surprised that she's also going to be able to play in a certain meld team, as we currently don't have that many pyro characters designated for the meld comps. I mean, at the end of the day, these are just my guesses. You're free to comment down what you think these characters are going to be, and who knows, you might get it right. There's a chance we will look back at this video and laugh at everything I mentioned, or applaud me for my amazing foresight. With all that said, I've taken up enough of your time, and remember, I stream right here on YouTube Wednesdays and Saturdays, so if you have time, stop by and let's chat. Until next time, I urge you all to stay safe, and peace. Bye.